Welcome. I am Dena, and this is Discussions with Dena. I am wishing you all peace and blessings. And I hope that this day finds you in the best of spirits, physically and mentally. Now, if you have not already, feel free to subscribe, friend, or follow me on social media. And you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, or anywhere that you listen to your podcast. So I am pretty sure most of us are observing the goings on in this country, the goings on that are around us, and even highly anticipating next week. That expected transition, that is. It is sure to be full of events and the anticipation of the lawlessness in Washington. I suspect there will not be much after the upheaval we saw at the Capitol by the domestic terrorists. Now, I will say one thing that the riot on the Capitol showed us. It really showed us the very, very different way that Black people are handled, how we are dealt with, and how we are treated by law enforcement. There is no denying this. No one in their right minds could have saw and bear witness to what we saw on the Capitol steps and deny this. What we saw, and everybody that's in their right minds can testify to, is what's called white privilege. It was evident and it was on full display. And after watching it, no one can say that it doesn't exist with a straight face. And as I sat and watched this riot in progress at the Capitol, I could not help but notice how these trespassers were being handled. Noticeably, this was a tender, compassionate manner in which the police dealt with people who were clearly violent, ferocious, and brutal. And I just kept thinking, these people are maintaining their composure and feeling the least bit threatened. They are simply not fearing for their lives in the midst of all this chaos where hundreds of non-Black hoodlums are clearly attacking them. So perhaps there may be something to this I fear for my life thing that they tend to practice whenever they're faced with charges for killing Black people. These thugs had guns, knives, bombs, sticks, and clearly were not there to march and have a conversation. These individuals did not hesitate to say they were there for revolution. Now, police had guns, batons. But isn't it amazing that they chose not to use these weapons, even though they were clearly threatened, some beaten, and clearly within their rights to use their weapons? And it tickled me just a bit because it is the excuse that many officers use to justify taking the life of many of our people. Let me rephrase it. Many officers use this excuse that they fear for their lives when they deal with us exclusively, Black people. Usually, when they use this excuse too, the offended is running away from them in a whole nother direction, and they still fear for their lives. But these people, agents of chaos that I saw on the Capitol steps, they were not there as civilized beings. They were there for revolution and they meant business. They said so. They are on the scene, and usually within seconds, they don't hesitate to take the life of a Black person. But conveniently, they practice the best restraint and tolerated being beaten, threatened, and did not fear for their lives in many cases, which clearly shows that that's a crappy excuse that they use to justify killing Black people. And it is pure BS. Now, some reports are now indicating that there were many police officers and members of Congress and officials that may have, in fact, aided and abetted this attempted coup or mutiny. You merely had to observe the reactions. People were taking selfies. I'm talking about the policemen. They were taking selfies, and they found a lot of officials and people in society that you would frown upon if you knew that they participated in such demonstrations. I also saw a report where there was a lady on a radio that was actually giving them clear instructions as to the layout of the building and the design as they were intruding into the Capitol. And that's a whole nother subject within itself. Now, as I looked on at this debacle live on TV, I wondered to myself, as many of you may have, what in fact was the intent of this crowd? And today you have to wonder, what was their mission? This was something that was clearly planned, and it wasn't a secret. It was all over the internet. Was it to take control of the Capitol building itself and do what? Was it to harm lawmakers and redo the election in favor of their candidate? Was it to take over the system of government in America and make Trump the president forever? I'm just wondering, and I'm sure many of us are pondering, what were their intentions? But this melee left a lot of questions in my mind. I still have a lot of unanswered questions. I would love the opportunity to ask some of those demonstrators. I'm sorry, thugs. One of which is, why did these people so happily abandon their posts? I'm referring to the police officers. Why didn't they hold the line? I know there were a lot of people, but seems like a lot of them abandoned their posts and didn't do what they were supposed to do. They could have called for backup. You could have used your mace. You had guns. You didn't use them. You certainly would have used them if these were non-white people. Now, there was clearly enough information available just online and on social media, as I said, that should have triggered security increases for this event. This march was anticipated to be a large march on the Capitol. It just leaves one to wonder, was there members of Congress that may have been accomplices to this insurrection? And if found, how will they be dealt with? There's just so much more to this than I believe we will ever have the answer to. Now, there were so many lawmakers that were afraid for their lives. I was watching when they stopped the certification process that they were doing, and they started to dismiss the members out of the chamber. And there was no denying that some of these people were in real fear for their lives, and rightly so. Some were shaken. There were reports that many of them were so scared that they were going to lose their lives, that they were calling relatives and they were saying goodbye or telling them where their wheels were. And I saw them praying and hiding and running for cover. And it was clear that some were afraid that they weren't going to see the next day. They felt they were going to die at the hands of these ruffians. So to see that fear and hear them praying to God to help them, and it just reminded me of what it must have been like for my own people, our enslaved ancestors, Black people here in this country who had to endure this kind of terrorism on a regular basis. It immediately just made me think, perhaps, just perhaps, they, the lawmakers who determine and introduce legislation that affects all of our lives, may have an inkling of what they had to endure. Yet many of them have no idea of how what they do truly impacts us, the choices that they make on our behalf. And perhaps they really have an opportunity now to know what it felt like or what it feels like for everyday Black people who have to deal with this kind of brutality on a daily basis. Because many of the people up there were, in fact, officers, off-duty officers, and I even hear of some Secret Service people were involved in this um, attempted coup. So maybe they can learn from this experience. For centuries, our forefathers and ancestors to this land were minding their own businesses in their own homes, shopping at stores, hell, just walking around down the street or driving down the street. And a group of goons and thugs like the ones at the Capitol would, in that same manner, torture, lynch, and kill them. So many of us that have never received any justice whatsoever. But we have endured this. And you have to ask, if anyone believes there is a just God and God is just, when will justice be rendered to the unjust? And our people have had to endure the worst of any people on this planet in this very unjust society. And I know some of you are deep in snow country and choose to ignore these facts, but it doesn't change this reality. You can choose to ignore them, but they are still facts nonetheless. Many a time our people would be sleeping in their beds, and these kind of racist terrorists, that's what they are, they're terrorists, would form a lynch mob and charge their homes in the same manner as what we saw live on TV. Sleeping in your bed, imagine that. The only difference here is that these lawmakers lived to tell everyone about their terrifying experience, and many of our people never did, nor were they ever. There were never, for many of our people, any consequences for this terroristic action. They were kidnapped, tortured, lynched, and murdered. That's what happened to our people. And that's just a little inkling for the young people who have never seen or had the opportunity to see what it's like. There it was in living color. Now, if we believe God is a just God, then we will have to know that at some point justice will be served. And perhaps this is why law enforcement was found lagging when it came to this insurgence, is because many of them were a part of it. And watching those that they know they have been unjust to, these people have taken the mindset that it's okay to harm those hot, deeply melanated people and allow others the privilege of continuing to live. And it proves to me that you can make a decision whether you can take someone's life or not if you are carrying a badge and a gun. This is what it proved to me. Because what I saw were domestic terrorists rampage in the Capitol. And these people were violent. I mean, they were ruthless. I saw them beating the officer. They pulled him down. They were taking his shield off and they were beating him and stabbing and doing all manner of evil. And it was right there in living color. Now, as a result of this domestic terrorist event, they now have the military protecting these lawmakers. They are making changes that will protect them physically now and into the future. You can bet that. And you can expect immediate laws to be introduced and passed that will punish any future uprisings or threats to these particular lawmakers. Yet, every day we have to deal with this kind of assault or the threat of a similar, yet often much more deadly one. And I want to know where are the laws that protect us, and I'm talking about us specifically. Did not these officers feel their lives were threatened by these insurgents? They just showed so much restraint. And like I said, it says to me that this excuse that police and law officials use that they fear for their lives is nothing more than a myth. And it is used only to justify their killing of Black people. Because most certainly they had plenty of reasons to fear for their own lives. And you can't deny there was restraint. I'm using that word a lot because that's what I saw. Those rioters were bursting windows, beating the officers. They threw homemade bombs. I saw them throwing bombs in a window, trying to make fire. They ramshacked that place. Then they defecated and urinated all over the walls and floor of the Capitol. Then I later seen them showing black men cleaning up what they had done. And they left when they were ready to leave. There was no great military response to their destructive behavior. And as one reporter said, now they are going to go back to the hotels, go back to the airports, or go to restaurants, sit down, and have a good conversation about what they did. And the whole while I'm sitting here watching it with my husband, I'm saying, look at this. Look how comfortable they are after they've done what they did. Look how they left the site. They left when they decided to leave. They didn't run away. They took their times and they left slowly. And it was not under threat of violence or a response to their violence. And this is called white privilege. And those are the benefits of white privilege. And until that mindset that they're practicing is eliminated completely, it has to be eliminated completely. There will never ever be any justice or any peace for Black people who are intertwined within Caucasian society. Or now today we have Caucasian want-to-bees. And whether it's here in America or anywhere else in the world, there can't be justice or peace with that kind of mindset and behavior, because it lets you know that these people do have control of what they do. And because they have a system that supports and backs them and does not hold them accountable, they have no reason to change. Okay. On another note, the current residents of the White House are busy preparing to vacate the premises. There were reports that showed the current residents packing their things, having it loaded on moving trucks, and they are actually leaving the White House. And as we all are preparing for this inauguration of the new incoming commander-in-chief, they are anticipating that there may be rioters again, but I can assure you that it will not be to the degree as we saw this before. There's too much um law enforcement in place now. There's no reason for them there, but we should be concerned about what may be happening in other places. Now, Trump has planned an elaborate military style farewell for himself. This is something he always wanted to do. So, he conveniently has planned on the morning of the inauguration a huge, elaborate send off for himself. It's one designed for the books. He will depart with the sound of the military band while he walks on a red carpet flanked by troops and a flyover of Air Force fighter jets as he boards Air Force One for his final time. This is something he's always wanted to do. I guess he says he's leaving in style. The current vice president, Pence, will be left to handle the duties that would normally be carried out by the exiting president, whom has chosen not to be a part of the inaugural events. And I'm going to tell you, this is an adult man, a grown man, an elderly man. But some of his behavior has been much like my 2-year-old. I have to admit this. It's hilarious, but it's still the truth. Now, he had certain duties that he should have carried out and is expected to carry out because it's supposed to represent the democracy's way of transferring power from one person to the next. It's supposed to be a civilized manner. But let's be honest, there has been nothing civilized or normal with this administration. Now, Pence's duties, which would normally be that of the exiting president, would be to, just some of it is visiting the troops and reviewing security plans for the inauguration. He has left this to Pence. The Senate has plans to impeach Trump, and some reports even say that it could be done as early as the day of the actual inauguration. That remains to be seen, and that's clearly up to Pelosi, who still has control over when she presents the documents to start the trial. But I don't believe this actually amounts to anything. He's out of office. It's like, I just don't see anything coming from this. And it is an embarrassment, and it's a mark in history for his administration. And it's not a positive thing. And it's supposed to prevent him from any future plans to pursue the presidential position. So he can't, and I think what they're trying to do is prevent him from even being able to hold office again, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But next week will be interesting, and I am sure many will be keeping watch of the events that are scheduled, as I will be, inshallah. Now, finally, the incoming commander-in-chief has made some promises to the American public that I am curious as to how it will be presented. I want to know if what he is offering the public, his promises that he's giving and would like to see happen, I want to know, will it actually take place, or can we expect a partial? Because often it is meant for good and it sounds good, but often you'll see them walk stuff back a little. So it would be interesting to see if what Biden proposes will actually, in fact, be what he promised is what we will get. Now, he had suggested and said that And that was one of the things I heard in the Georgia election, that if you vote for, who was it, Warnock and the other guy, that you would get the $2,000 stimulus payments. That was something that Biden was saying. And I have already seen that it's went down to 1,400. I don't care about that 600. He said 2,000. So that 2,000 stimulus now is 1,400. In spite of, he has some good ideas as to how he could try to assist those that are in need, and there are a lot of people in need. There's no denying it at this time. However, I do think he leaves out a great number of people because, as Nikki Justice pointed out, he assumes that everyone is getting unemployment that is unemployed. And that's not necessarily true. So when you're giving them boosts, what about those people who don't get it or not receiving that? How will you help them? Are those who are empty nesters, that may need funding? You have to keep in mind, you can't just exclusively leave out people, because everybody is hurting at this time. Now, there are some wonderful proposals that he have: the rental assistance, there is the PPP and EIDL, which they are promoting, and we'll discuss that later. And I would encourage you, if there are grants that are available that you do not have to pay back if you are doing a business from home or a business on the side, I would encourage you to look into it. If it's something that you don't owe back in taxes or you won't have to pay back, take advantage of it. We have to get as much information as we can on it. But I am hearing that these funds that were not allowed, because when the PPP loans were available, most of the Black businesses or small business didn't have access to it, because these banks, as they normally do, they gave that money to their companies and friends that they knew had personal relationships, and most of the small mom and pop places were left out. Or if you have a side hustle that you're paying taxes on, maybe you are a content creator, maybe what you do is sell items. These are considered businesses. If you're doing a babysitting business, if you are earning money on the side and it's a legitimate business, you can get these grants. And grants mean you don't have to pay them back. So these are things that I think are very good. And I think if they can be approved, because that still remains to be seen, how, if all of this will be as he is hoping it would be. And one other thing that I'm noticing, they're playing around with the tax credits for children this year, which is a good idea. I seen on one particular post that I read an article where they wanted to give $4,000 per child tax credits. Then I seen one that said 3,000. We're not certain where that will fall because nothing right now is in concrete. It's still up in the air and remains to be seen. But that's a very, very helpful thing. That means that you can get $4,000 or $3,000 a child on your tax credit. That means you're going to get that money back when you file your taxes. And if you are in need, that would be very helpful. If you have 4 children and it's $4,000, it's $16,000. Or if you have 4 children with that $3,000 credit, you're going to get $12,000 just for that, which is very helpful, because there, like I said, there are so many people that are behind in their rent. They're struggling to pay their bills and they need this. So wherever you can benefit, get all the facts that you can. I will be sharing as much information that I can, but I don't want to give false information. So I'm certain to let you know that this stuff has not been approved as of yet. But when things are confirmed, then I will be glad to share more information with you. But take advantage of these grants. That means that's money that you don't have to pay back. So they won't tax you on that money as long as it's done and used the way that it was intended to. But like I said, how it all ends up remains to be seen, because right now these are simply proposals. Now, Martin Luther King Day is observed, I think it's on Monday. And I think today is his actual birthday. So, as we reflect on our struggle here in America, Black people, and our fight for liberation here in America, and our fight for freedom, even to this day, I urge you, and I urge all of us, to take just a moment and reach out to your loved ones, your family members, the people you haven't spoke to in a minute, because these have been some trying times for some of us. And sometimes you kind of put people on the back burner a little bit. But I would urge you to take a moment, reach out to your family, and just tell them, hi, how are you? Let them know you're thinking about them. That little word can mean so much to people sometimes, because you can feel like you've been forgotten. And it's easy to do because we're in the house and we're not visiting as much as we normally would because of the pandemic. So I would ask all of you, just take a moment and call some of your loved ones and see how they are doing. Just have a little conversation. We should never take one another for granted, because none of us are promised tomorrow, but we are here today. And there is no better time than the present to put away your foolishness, get off your high horses, and release yourself from the mental prison of your mind. Some of us make everything about ourselves with no compassion or leniency to those whom we claim to love or care for. We get mad and upset with people over little minute stuff that you can't even remember. And I am not excusing emotions, because we're all entitled to have emotions. But we forget, I don't even know what I was mad with you for. I'm just mad with you. So I want to encourage you to take time out to let your loved ones know you care. Just a simple hello. Now, you don't have to forget the past, but live in the present and send out good, positive energy into the universe so that it can be returned to you. Now, I want you to join me right here next Saturday, same time, same channel. And if you have not already done so, I want to invite you to subscribe, to like, to share, and you feel free to leave me a comment on any of the topics that I am discussing. I enjoy reading your comments and some of your emails. You can friend and follow on Facebook, YouTube, and listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, or anywhere you get your podcasts. I want to thank you for listening, and I will see you next time on Discussions with Dena.